Okay. Hi guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am personally so excited to be hosting for you. We have two incredible panelists, so I think my job is really easy today. I think they've got the hard job, but honestly, we've got experienced speakers and they've got so much to share with us today. I'm so excited. So our two speakers, it's Dr. Lerato and our very own Kundwani. And Dr. Lerato will be taking us through the importance of mental health and achieving stability as young professionals. I know myself personally, and I know very much my colleagues, this is definitely a hot topic and something that we really need. So we're really grateful to have her with us today. And following her presentation, we'll hear from Kondwani and I'll detail his presentation then. Lerato, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Simone. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, Lerato, I'd just like to share your bio. Sorry, before you continue. Dr. Lerato is affectionately known as Lerato. She's a wife, a mother, a medical doctor, an entrepreneur, a public speaker. Sure, this list is long. And she's very passionate about young professionals and striking a balance between all the aspects of their lives and still pursuing their goals and aspirations and talents outside of their profession. I think that's very admirable. She holds a medical degree from the University of Witwatersrand, and she's currently working and pursuing a specialty in public health medicine at the University of Pretoria. She says that she has a special interest in empowering young women in academics, life skills, business skills, and being well-rounded individuals through motivational speaking and regular skill workshops and individual coaching. So from her bio alone, I think, it's evident that we're very grateful to have you here, Lerato. And would you please introduce yourself to our members and share with us, please? We're so excited to hear.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can. I'm so glad you turned your video on because I have a photo of you over here and you're so gorgeous. I was just hoping that, at least everyone else could also get a chance to see. So great.
Thanks. Is the lighting fine for the video?
It's perfect.
All right. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all the panelists and all our attendees and everybody who's taken out some time this afternoon to join us. Thank you so much for the platform and for the invite as well. So I think Simone has really done a great job with the introduction. I don't think I'm going to add too much to that. But yeah, I'm just known as Lerato. I'm a medical doctor. I'm practicing at Steve Biko Academic Hospital currently, and I'm also affiliated with the University of Pretoria. So yeah, that's what I do professionally. I'm a mom and a wife as well, and an avid entrepreneur as well, running a few companies and businesses. So in a nutshell, that's what I do, and that's what keeps me busy. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak about a topic that's so close to my heart. But not just that, I think it's very relevant to everybody, not just professionals, but to everyone. Literally, I mean, we just came out of COVID. Well, we're still in COVID, but yeah, so I think it's a great platform. So yeah, thank you so much once more again, Simone, for the introduction. All right, great. So I know I'll be joined by a speaker later on. So Simone, if I'm correct, I have about 20-25 minutes.
Yes,
I'm going to try and squeeze in as much as I can. And I'm just going to share my screen. So I'm just going to ask for an indication if you can see my screen.
No problem.
All right.
There we go. You've started screen sharing. Beautiful. I can see your screen.
All right. Can you see that clearly?
Yes, 100%.
All right. So today I was tasked with, the topic and, such a sort of like a really important matter that I think, doesn't receive much attention or enough attention, which is mental health and mental health amongst us as professionals. But I think also mental health, holistically, not just as professionals, but just as young people. And, everybody literally is just trying to, do their best every single day. So, yes, today we'll just be having a quick nutshell. It's a chat, it's a small, very short talk. The time we have is not enough to really delve into everything. There's so many more factors to consider. But for the purpose of today's topic, I'll just try and just, summarize as much as I can on the importance of mental health and achieving stability as young professionals. So I wanted us to just begin by, understanding and defining what mental health is, because I think most of the time when we hear the word mental health, because there's so much stigma around it, there's so much victimization that occurs around it, that the word mental health in itself already has a negative connotation, whereas it means something that's actually positive. So I wanted us to have a clear understanding and definition of what mental health is. So I took a definition from the World Health Organization, which I felt was a great source to just explain what mental health and mental well-being means. And then from these points, you'll be able to understand, the sort of points that I want to put, the message I want to point across today. So the WHO defines it as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes, firstly, their potential, their ability to cope with normal stresses of life, their ability to work productively, and then being able to make a contribution to their community or their society. And this definition is also, very much inclusive of other things, not just set in stone. There's a lot that goes into one's mental well-being or mental health, and that also includes, like I said on the screen, psychological well-being, social well-being, your feelings, your thoughts and actions. Pretty much, what defines you. Sorry. So those factors then will then determine how you cope with everyday life pressures, reactions, decision making, how you react to people, how you relate with people. And I just wanted to just highlight some of the points. The reason why I've highlighted some of these words, like potential. Potential speaks to a person who can now identify their capabilities and someone who can identify their strengths. So we know that this person is someone who has good thoughts about themselves and can channel positive thoughts about themselves. Normal, by saying that you can cope with normal stresses of life. This is something that's, within the normal spectrum of the challenges that we go through daily, irrespective of who you are, what you've achieved, your challenges. All of us have a spectrum of normal that we can cope with. But obviously, anything outside of this, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be surprised if someone is not coping, or someone ends up being ill because of that, because it is outside the normal events that we are supposed to cope with. And by normal, I really mean the basic normal, like being able to just wake up in the morning, brush your teeth, groom yourself, drive your car, get to work and be productive. There are people that can't do that. So that is normal for us. And then working productively, but not just productively. Some people, go over and beyond and excelling in whatever field that you're doing, and being able to make a contribution, which also speaks to a person's sense of responsibility in their community, in their household. When someone knows that they are responsible for themselves, but also other people, you can see that there's an element of being mentally well or mentally healthy. So all these points will then make sense as to when someone cannot achieve any of these, or even more, that it's a red flag. We need to intervene, we need to help as soon as possible. I'm going to go through to the next slide. So I also wanted to just highlight today's topic, which basically says, why is it important to be mentally well and achieve stability in high functioning work environments? We are exposed every single day to high pressures at work, irregardless of which sector you're in, not just at work, but at home, extramural activities, family responsibilities. We all have some sort of pressure that we're dealing with. And it's that important to be able to not only resolve, problems, but to also resolve stresses and mental triggers that can eventually develop into mental conditions. So today's topic is mainly around how do we prevent that? How do we then start a nature or a culture in our workplaces and homes where we don't wait for a crisis to occur for us to start putting our mental health or mental well-being as a priority? Because most of the time we're only aware of a disturbance or a compromise to mental well-being once something wrong has happened, or once we're in a crisis. Then we say, okay, now we need an intervention, now we need to do something. But then we need to start having the same attitude that we have towards something as simple as going for a dental checkup. I always say to my patients that in order for you to look after your mental health well, you need to stop stigmatizing it or putting it as a problem. It needs to start being something that you do preventatively. The same way that you go and do an HIV test, the same way that you go to your doctor to do an annual checkup, the same way that you go to your dentist to get, your teeth cleaned, etc. That's the same way that mental well-being should be approached. You should say, you know what, I might not be in a crisis mode right now. I might not be stressed particularly right now. or have problems, but I need to sit down with someone, I need to talk with someone, and to make sure that mentally I'm fine. And then that also helps to also bring out issues that you might not have been aware of. A lot of people, you know, when they start actually introspecting, they realize there are actually certain things that are very subtle, that may actually be causing huge problems, but you don't know about it because mental health is usually just put at the end, you know, at the end of our priorities. So I made an example here in the slide that something as simple as your, you know, inability to effectively communicate at work or being overwhelmed, that could, you know, potentially result in, you know, accumulative stress, which ends up being an actual disorder. So let us not wait for certain triggers and unresolved issues to result in conditions before we start acting on them. All right, then. So I just wanted to also highlight that mental well-being is a continuum. And by continuum, I just mean that it's from birth right through the way to adulthood. It's not something that you can just start and stop. And there are so many factors that will influence your mental well-being, from the family that you come from, your childhood experiences, any trauma you would have went through during childhood, the kind of relationships that you had as a child, your points of references. You know, usually our points of references are people of high significance in our lives, our parents, our families, role models in the community, you know, people that you look up to, people that motivate you. So that also helps to cultivate, you know, your mental well-being, because it's your point of reference, it's what you know. And we said trauma, also learned and adopted coping and defense mechanisms. A lot of us have learned that from our upbringing. You know, you see your mom, you see your dad, your older sister and older brother, you look at how they react to stresses, you look at how they react to problems that occur in the family or at work. You know, you look at if parents fight, you know, you learn from that. And this is why I think I just wanted to also highlight the fact that as adults, who some of us are parents, some of us are older sisters, older brothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, parents, we have a responsibility. And the way that we react to situations, that's what we are showing our kids, that's what we are showing the young people that are looking up to us. So when you are cultivating, or you know, trying to introduce an environment or an attitude at home and at work where, you know, you are trying to build safe spaces for communications, safe spaces for vulnerability, that's what people take from you. You know, especially, you know, my concern right now is especially when you go home, the kids who are looking up to you, they look at how you deal with problems and they take that the same way that we also looked up to our parents or our role models and saw how they deal with stress. And because of that, that's become we've adopted some of those coping mechanisms or defense mechanisms. So it's a continuum. It's something that develops right through our entire lives, and every single thing that we experience or that we go through has an effect, whether it's positive or negative. All your experiences affect and shape the way that, you know, your insight and your judgment. All right then. So factors that can compromise mental health in the workplace and beyond. Many things can compromise that, especially like we said, if you have those unresolved triggers or unresolved stresses that don't allow you to be able to sort of express yourself, to feel safe, to feel like you won't be victimized. So, you know, you also need to ask yourself questions like, in the workspace, how do I react to conflict? How do you react to someone who has a different opinion to yours? How do you manage your time? How do you split your time? What is of priority to you? You know, what comes first? Work, family, business, extramural activities. And we need to find a way in which every single part or every single factor can still be accommodated in your life, and you can still find joy and happiness from it without the other one compromising the other. And in most cases, work is always the one that, you know, comes up tops and, you know, is our priority, because it's natural. It's, you know, it's your income producing activity most of the time. Most of the times it's your only one. And, you know, you give a lot of attention to it, you give a lot of time to it, which is a natural response to that. But the problem comes when the other things that produce joy and happiness and feelings of gratitude and, you know, happiness start now being affected. So you also need to ask yourself, what is it that I'm prioritizing, and how is it affecting the other things that I enjoy? I think in my bio, I spoke specifically about the fact that a lot of us, because of what our careers have demanded of us, because of having to study for a long time, or having to, you know, spend lots of time just investing in a career, you end up sort of neglecting other skills that you have or other talents that you have, you know, which just sort of take the backseat for years. I mean, example for me, I was mid school for like what, 6, 7 years. I had still had to work for, you know, community service for another 3 years. So for a good 10 years, I had to put aside everything else that I like to do, whether I loved you know, to be involved in business, whether I love public speaking, whether I love reading or writing, because work was so demanding. Your other skills and talents end up, you know, taking the backseat, and that can cause a lot of distress. That can cause a lot of discouragements, because you know you are more than who you are as a professional. There's more to you than the person who goes to work and comes back. You know, there's more to us than just, you know, the degree that you get when you walk out of Wits University. And it's just important for us to now start prioritizing, I mean, as best as possible, to start saying what is it that previously used to bring a lot of joy, that used to help me to cope and to distress, that I can now try and filter into my life again. You know, and try and have that balance. It's not easy, not to say that it's easy, but there are platforms to assist with that. So the way in which you communicate as well with people, not just at work and everyone everywhere else, is effective. You know, it's very effective in terms of helping you to cope with the environment. Are you a person who's able to ask for assistance when you need assistance, or you want to do everything by yourself? Are you able to delegate? So that says a lot about one's not just character, but your ability to adapt to situations. So, you know, your ability to be confident when you want to suggest something at work or at home. This goes back again to, you know, our upbringing. Often we say that, you know, children who were never involved in conversations at home, who were never allowed to voice their opinions, they have a potential of becoming adults as well, who are constantly second guessing themselves and not being confident in saying, hi guys, I have a suggestion, or I think we can improve in this area. So it's very important and mindful. We need to be mindful of how, you know, we communicate, and how we express our dissatisfaction or anything that we would want to change. So I'm just going to go a little bit into coping mechanisms versus defense mechanisms, because I think a lot of people, you know, it can be beneficial to understand that. But even more so, you know, it's nice to see if you have coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms, and it's something that you can pick up even from this short talk, and then you can know that, okay, you know what, I might have to get assistance with in dealing with coping mechanisms which I thought were okay, or defense mechanisms which can actually be potentially detrimental. All right, so we have coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms, you know, in the mental health spectrum, which are essentially ways in which we react to situations, really, in a nutshell. Ways in which we react to, you know, stresses, ways in which we react to offense or conflict. Yeah, just a nutshell of how we react. So with under coping mechanisms, we have a definition of it being something that's very conscious. It's very conscious, it's intentional, it's purposeful. It's a tool that you use to manage stressful situations. And we can just split that up into active coping mechanisms and avoidant ones. Active ones are ones which, you know, you are consciously making an attempt to reduce stress, to try and mitigate situations. You know, you're not passive about it. They're quite long term, they're quite long lasting, they're quite effective as well, because now you've learned how that mechanism has helped you in a certain situation, so you know how to apply it in other different situations. It's adaptable and sustainable. So by adaptable, like I said, you're able to use it in different situations. It doesn't matter whether you are faced with a stressful situation at work, in another employment environment, in your business, or at home, but you're able to say, you know what, this is how I'm going to cope with it because I've seen it work for me. And usually we think that we have coping mechanisms, but we don't. And at times we need to sit down and say, you know what, there is no harm in getting professional assistance to help me with my coping mechanisms. I might not have, like I said before, you might not be in crisis mode right now, or, you know, in a bad mental space right now, but knowing that these are the coping mechanisms that are available, these are the natural coping mechanisms that we have, and how do I apply them to different situations? That can be so helpful once, you know, you are faced with a very stressful situation, because life happens. Life is so unpredictable, and you need to be constantly, you know, aware that what can I do for myself and for the people around me, to make sure that I deal with the situation as best as possible without compromising your health even further. And then we have avoidant coping mechanisms, where, you know, it's very much, it sort of overlaps with the defense coping mechanisms. It's just where you just ignore. You ignore problems, you ignore issues, you ignore situations, you don't deal with it, you don't make any conscious effort to say, I need to deal with this. And, that's common in a lot of us, where certain things you just feel, I just don't have the strength for this. Or even if you do have the strength for it, you don't want to compromise, other functions. So I've written that it's quite maladaptive as well, because you're not able to use that in different situations. You're not able to use, you can't avoid things forever, eventually, they become a vicious cycle that you need to deal with. And then I'll move on to the defense mechanisms, which are usually actually unconscious, and you are usually unaware. So these are the ones that are learned very early on in our lives, very early on from childhood, depending on our upbringing and, our grooming, where you just either avoid, you rationalize, you are in denial, or one that's very common, you project. So even when someone is, saying something at work that's really has no offensive intention, because of your unresolved issues, you project, and you take offense, or you don't manage conflict easily, or everything and everyone is competition, because you yourself, you lack that self-confidence to say, no, actually, let me work on my coping mechanisms instead of using defense mechanisms all the time. So yes, that was just like a bit of a nutshell of, coping mechanisms versus defense mechanisms. But I think in short, before I just conclude, I just wanted to highlight the things that we can do for ourselves, firstly, because in essence, just like the example of a toothache, it's your responsibility to go to the dentist eventually. Just with mental health, it is your responsibility as an individual to prevent, first of all, getting to crisis mode before you act, and to start making mental well-being strategies a day-to-day part of your life. It can't just be, when you're just feeling down. Even on your happiest days ever, be aware of where you are mentally. And there are certain strategies that I'll just share right now of how we can do that. So how professionals and employers can support a culture of coping mechanisms. We need continuous mental health support systems, not just at work, but even at home. But in this case, because we're honing in on work, we need working environments where employers are cognizant of the fact that work has a lot of pressure, and work exerts extreme pressure on us as individuals, on our families, on society as a whole. And to keep, the economy running, to keep businesses open, to keep the doors of business open in institutions, you need a system of people. And those people are not robots. They are people with thoughts, with feelings, people that go home to other people. We don't go home to robots either. We go home to interact with loved ones. So we need a continuous mental health system in our companies, in our businesses, even our hospitals, wherever we may be working, that is cognizant of that. We need continuous debriefing. There's a lot of trauma that occurs in workplaces that's not dealt with. Recently I just had to be a part of a trauma team at work, where we had to counsel our nursing staff who and doctors actually, who are certifying 20 to 30 people dead a day. That is huge. That is major. And that's traumatic in itself. And just because you are a professional does not mean that you don't have a right to be vulnerable, and to take a step back and say, you know what, this is painful. This is heartbreaking. Someone has just lost their lives, and I have to go break down the bad news. Eventually, yes, you do cope, but you need to go back to your human nature as well and say, you're not a rock, you're not a stone. You need to be in touch with your emotions at all times. But what's important is that, who are you in touch with those emotions with? Are there people at work or a platform where you can go to and debrief, and to recharge? Because you can't just, be going as though nothing has happened. So it's really important. I hope and pray that, most of our employers, most of our businesses or companies can have platforms where mental health is prioritized. Because eventually, if you don't have people that are motivated, people that are excited to come to work, eventually illness is going to settle in, and then you're going to end up being distracted. Excuse me. All right. So then with life, I hope I'm still okay with time. All right. Life coaching is extremely important as well. If you're not a person who wants to go to therapy, get a life coach to just advise you on major life-changing decisions, even the small decisions that you make daily, how to just work through daily expectations systematically. We spoke about safe communication platforms, safe mental health services that don't stigmatize employers. And then activities outside of work that help you to distress, to relax, and promote holistic self-care. at the end of the day, it's still your responsibility to look after yourself. If you don't, identify that I need a break, I need to relax, no one else will. Everybody will think that, okay, you are fine, we can keep on giving you and piling you with more work. So you also need to learn to speak up for yourself and say, I am under pressure, I am overwhelmed, and I need help. But also don't neglect the things outside of work that help you. If it's your business helps to drive you, it helps to motivate you, push that as well. If it's sports, if it's physical activity, if it's the arts, whatever it is that you love and enjoy outside of your professional, requirements, don't neglect it either. Prioritizing things that are of significance. So family relationships, spiritual growth, we said physical wellness, nutrition, and all other activities that promote wellness. Prioritize that, because at the end of the day, I read something that said, we go back to family, we go back home, we are easily replaceable, to be honest, in any workplace. And it's painful to say, but it's a statement that I want to just highlight, to say that you need to look after yourself, you need to look after your health, because if you don't, no one will. And if you don't do it for yourself, someone else will do it better and be able to replace you when you cannot cope. So when you're not coping, it's really important to speak out. I also understand that there's a lot of stigma around it, and that's why I'm encouraging, platforms that welcome employers, or employees rather, to speak up and to voice their opinions, and just managing your time well, and not forgetting that if you need assistance, you need assistance. There is no failure or a sense of weakness in asking for help. You are not an island, I'm not an island, we are all a system. We literally all form part of a system, and we need to be constantly engaging in platforms that provide assistance. So I think in a nutshell, I've sort of summarized as best as I could on mental well-being, in the workplace and as young professionals. And I would like to welcome any questions or any comments that anybody has at this present moment. I think I think I'm just about over my time. So thank you so much once more again. I hope there's something that you took out of today's message. And yes, any questions or comments are welcomed at this moment.
Hi, Lerato. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna turn my video on as well. I think you spoke about very real things, and I think things that you yourself have gone through. And I appreciate that you brought in your own stresses and your own situation, because I think so often when we're spoken to, people will give us a theoretical response, or these are the 5 steps, and not personalize it, because I think the more we personalize something, the more meaningful the message. And I can tell that this is really something that is close to your heart, because you brought yourself in with you. So I'd just like to take a look at the questions. So I will so we have a question, and it's been posted anonymously. Lerato, the question is, how can you learn to communicate effectively at work and in your relationships? How can you learn to communicate effectively at work and in your relationship?
Okay, all right. We said it was from an anonymous. Okay. So, I mean, I don't think there's like a perfect answer to that. I don't think there ever is. But going back to your ability, first of all, communicating also goes back to you need to understand that whatever that I want to say, whatever that I want to, whatever point I want to make across, is deserving to be heard, and it's worthy to be heard. So, because eventually I think sometimes when we communicate and then the response is not adequate, or it's not because it wasn't adequate, it's because you yourself didn't think that this is so. You need to first say to yourself, I deserve to be heard. Whatever that I want to communicate, clearly the fact that it needs communication is something that I want to sort out, both work and relationships. So I think a lot of self-belief works. I know sometimes people can think this is very much in the air, but self-belief is a huge thing. If you believe that a point that you want to say across is significant enough, do that. Secondly, there's no need to be aggressive. There's no need to be offensive. We know our relationships, our relations, and the people at work. Unfortunately, sometimes the people at work, we don't know their characters, but it's important to know someone else's character. Like if I've just met you for the first time, Simone, I'm going to address you differently to how I'm going to address my husband, or how I'm going, So it's also important to know what are people's communication languages. And once you've done that and you express yourself to the best of your ability, whether it's verbally, whether electronically, you're sending an email, you're writing a note down, it's a phone call, whatever way that best communicates. Like for example, I know my supervisor at work, she cannot do texting, she can't do emails. Like she'll call you literally every minute, but I understand that's how she communicates, you know, and I could potentially be very irritated by it, but I've chosen to say, you know what, this is how she communicates. And for her, sending a text and waiting for a response doesn't work. And it makes her feel like, you know, she's being ignored. So I will answer and pick up whatever time of day or night, because I know it's an important way that she communicates. It's very important to understand, how does this person communicate? What do they prefer? And not to be offended by that. That's how they communicate. So I think, you know, I could sort of say it like that, that believe that you whatever statement that you want is worthy of being heard, and just find out what's the best way to communicate, and just point across. Also, their reaction is not a reflection of, you know, your statement being useless, or, you know, not worthy of being taken seriously, but that's how they're communicating. So also not for us to take offense with the way that things are, we get responses. So I think that's the best way I could answer it. I hope that answers the question.
No, 100%. So just so a comment before I ask the further question is that I want to say unfortunately, but I think I'm going to say fortunately, Kondwani can't make it for his session. So that actually means you have more time. And as much as I want to pretend to be sad about that, I think we now have a greater opportunity for our listeners and the people who are with us to actually dive deeper into the concept that you're mentioning. And we'll schedule a further session for Kondwani. I've seen already comments saying, yay, more time. So I think the audience shares my joy at having you for longer. So that's the first comment. The second thing I just want to ask you is, you know, you've mentioned how people communicate. And it's incredibly important because everyone has a different way of communicating. And I heard from a friend of mine who went to America, and they said goodbye to their friends, you know, as they were leaving the house. And as they left, the door was closed behind them. They didn't get the South African goodbye at the door, goodbye at the car, wave as you leave. And you know, that like 4 or 5 times that South Africans, just as a culture, we say goodbye frequently before leaving. And, you know, it's something as simple as that, a miscommunication that can make you feel that the other person's rude. And my question to you is, how do we find out from our colleagues how they best communicate? What would you advise is the best way to approach that?
All right. So I think, you know, in not just in the workplace, but in general, investing in a relationship is always really beneficial, even if it's just, you know, a short while. But getting to know how someone communicates firstly is important. And what you just said now, you pointed out, you know, cultural differences that, you know, could potentially make someone look as though they're really uninterested, or they may be rude, or, you know, they're hard to engage with. And it's really got nothing to do with that. It just has to do with the person that you know, that you're communicating with. I'm going to just give an example. One of my seniors at work, I just met recently, she actually used to be a head of a department 5 years ago where I used to work. And we didn't get along, but we didn't get along because there was conflict. We didn't get along because we didn't know each other. And we never said anything offensive to each other. I just didn't click with her. I just didn't like her because I just felt, you know, she doesn't talk as much as I do, because I talk a lot, you know. Am I not funny enough or anything like that? And 5 years later, we crossed paths, and she is the most amazing person ever. I just didn't take the time, and she didn't take the time. We just never knew each other. But for the first time, we were sitting in a room together and talking and engaging, and I was like, wow, this person is really awesome. And she's helped me so much, you know, at work. But it was just a matter of, that's her culture. That's who she was. That's her character. She's not as loud or as forthcoming as you may be, you know.
And so love and appreciate that person for who and what they are as their package, and deal with that package and interact with it. Yes, no, that's beautiful.
Cultural differences make a huge difference. Making an effort to invest in that relationship is extremely important as well. And yes, I do agree. There are some really difficult people. Let's just, you know, be mindful of that. Not everybody's easy to approach. Yeah. But I think when you're genuine about your intentions to communicate, it's only human. It's only natural for someone to respond to that, especially if it's work related. I mean, what other intention will you have? When it's personal, it might be a bit different. You know, but I think it's worth investing in relationships, friendships, relationships, you know, romantic relationships, relationships at work, and just trying to find out, you know, what kind of person is this, and you know, and sometimes if it fails, it's fine, guys. There are billions of other people in the world. Really, it's fine to just say, you know, I cannot communicate with this person, I'm going to need someone
Yeah.
to lie. Don't just leave it.
Mm,
At least make an effort to say, let me get someone that I can speak to come and intervene. And that's the best you can do in every situation, really.
no, I completely agree with you. I mean, you know, you have a professional relationship, and I think it's very important to emphasize the need to be professional. But you won't necessarily find your best friend in every colleague, and we need to accept that that's okay because we're different people. We have another question from Masima. So, are you ready for your next question, Lerato?
Yes, sure. We can go ahead.
All right. So the question is, can an employee be fired if they acted out of a lack of knowledge of their mental health issues? So I'll repeat the question. Can an employee be fired if they acted out of a lack of knowledge of their own mental health issues?
All right. Okay. So just to make sure that I understand that correctly, is the question sort of asking, can someone lose their job because they have a mental health or had a mental health condition that was not disclosed, and because of that they acted maybe in a way that is deemed as maybe inappropriate at work,
Inappropriate.
but it actually wasn't that. It might have been an episode of the mental health condition. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's how I understand.
Yeah, that's how I also understand it. I mean, that's not very easy to navigate, but I guess that's where, the specialty of occupational health comes in, occupational health medicine, where, we study laws around this. And mental health conditions I recognize just as any other medical condition. And I also understand why someone wouldn't, be very forthcoming about it because of, the fear of stigma. Sometimes you're scared that if I come forth about the fact that you've got PTSD or anxiety, or you're once diagnosed with depression or bipolar mood disorder, I'm going to be stigmatized. And sometimes people can even treat you differently just by knowing that. So I do recognize the fear that lies around that. But I don't think that one can necessarily be, obviously they have to check with the laws. I don't think one can necessarily be fired. If they obviously they're going to have to prove that a lot of proof is going to have to, investigations are going to have to go on. But what I want to highlight is the same thing as well. If there's a condition that you feel can easily compromise your standing at work or your behavior at work, it's best to disclose. It's always best to disclose something like that. It's different from like an infective condition or something that could prevent you from coming to work. This is something that could actually affect how you interact with other people. It's great to disclose. It's not a must that you disclose, but if you feel safe and that it's great to disclose. But in that situation, a lot of investigation has to happen, because also you do have employees who are going to take advantage of their own mental health condition and act out of turn or act inappropriately, knowing that they can always fall back and say, oh, but I had a day where, I had a manic episode, or I had severe anxiety, or I had a trigger from my PTSD. So it's not easy to navigate. It's not even easy to give you a set answer around that. Like I said, I definitely need to come back. I don't mind even if the person asked the question can leave their email address. I don't mind referring back to the occupational health law and just giving like a nice summary of that based on the law. But like with any other inappropriate behavior at work, investigations have to happen. But I don't necessarily think that it could result in the loss of a job if it can be proven that it was a consequence of a mental health condition.
Larissa, I have a question. Have you watched the movie The Joker? The live action one.
Shucks, I think I watched too many movies. No.
So part of that, his character in the movie is actually quite dark, and has a lot of mental health issues. And the reason I bring it up is because there was a scene in the movie that I think like I was reminded of now when you were saying this, and it's I think you wrote down, and I'm paraphrasing horribly, but essentially what you wrote down is that the hardest part about having a mental health condition is that people expect you to behave like you don't. And it just, for me, that moment in the movie was so profound because it tends to be true. And yeah, so that's just maybe a segue into our next question. I just like to open it up. So this was also posted anonymously. The question, Lerato, is how do you help someone in your circle who clearly shows signs of mental distress? Okay. Is it appropriate to even suggest that they seek help? I think this is a very relatable question. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Lerato. How do you help someone in your circle who clearly shows signs of mental distress? and is it appropriate?
All right. Thank you so much for that question. Very relevant question, very important question, because I'm very certain that at least once in our lifetime, we are all going to be faced with a situation like that. If not ourselves, it's someone close to us or someone that we know. And it also goes back to relationships. It goes back to relations. The kind of relationship you have with the person determines so much about how you're going to speak to them, your tone, and how it's going to be perceived. If someone that's really close to me, either at work or at home, is pointing out that, listen, I'm noticing a change in behavior, I'm noticing a change in your mood, your lack of desire and things that you used to enjoy, you're not eating or you're not exercising, your mood is very low on most days, most of the day, then I know that it's someone who's not saying it out of a textbook, but it's someone that knows me and knows my character. So relationships make a huge difference in that. So if it's someone in your circle, it means it's someone that's close to you already. And it's very important to sort of tread very carefully, and I think that's why it's so hard to sort of unpack mental health well-being sometimes, because you need to tread very carefully because it affects all of us, but it can be very subtle. But when it's not subtle and it's very obvious, and you can identify in your circle that I think my friend or my neighbor or whoever it is needs some sort of help, it's best to also start to speak to them first. Do not bombard them or, unintentionally just sort of send help towards them as though, it's something that you don't want to be part of. I think it's very important to approach the person personally and approach it in a way as though I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to, to discredit you, but I'm here to find out, are you really okay? And if you're not, we have different areas that we can explore, because I think with mental health, it's very important for someone, as you said, it's very important for someone not to feel like there's something wrong with me only. It's not a matter of there's something wrong with you only. It's like when you get a flu. Why is it that when you get a flu, we just say, oh, they've got a flu? But when you have an anxiety disorder or when you get triggered very easily, it's important for someone not to feel as if, what, this is it's exclusive. This is just my thing. So it's just important to tread carefully around those lines. And also, I think what would help is also do a little bit of your own research before, because you might be very surprised when you approach this person, they have questions, like an entire question of, okay, now that you are here, what are you going to do to help me? What are you going to do? So
Yeah, don't go in unprepared, because basically it's a fragile system.
Yes.
And if you're going to go in unprepared, you may just make it a little bit worse, because the person feels a sense of judgment, they feel fear, they feel those things, and potentially something you said like really resonated. It was that, don't treat it like, here's resources. Okay, cool, Lerato, here's the counselor, here's a bouquet of flowers and some champagne or whatever it is Lerato enjoys. Go deal with your stuff and come back. So it's not that. It's I'm here, I'm present, I'm your friend, and let's go through this together. And I think that's what you highlighted.
Yes.
So in response to the question, it's that yes, it is appropriate.
Is it appropriate to?
Oh, yes, appropriate to approach.
Yes, no, definitely it's appropriate. Because I mean, at some point, you might just be the saving grace. You might just be the person who is there at the time when things were getting bad. So approach it, but use some of these strategies where do a little bit of background research. Understand, what you're potentially facing. Don't go just unprepared. Get advice from professionals, get advice from someone who might have went through something similar, and then approach it, as gentle and as caring as possible.
100%. Lerato, do you have time to stay on with us until 6, perhaps?
Sure. No, I have no problem to stay until 6.
Okay. No, lovely. Because you mentioned that you split your time, so I'm just wondering how finely split your time was, and if you had a little bit of extra for us. So you in your description, and like already I can tell that you're like a great person, and both of us have similar personalities and we get along great. But with all the things that you've mentioned, so you're a mom, you take on quite a number of roles. So you've mentioned that you're in business, you're a public speaker, and you also mentioned, splitting time and finding joy. So specifically on how do you split time to find joy? I think is the question. How would one do that? It might be a difficult question, but please do share with us.
Yeah, so I think my thoughts around that, would go back to an individual's character, and your character is also going to determine what's important to you. And I think it's important that we recognize that we are different, we are unique, and different things are important to us. There are people who are prepared to lay their lives down for their jobs, and there are people who are willing to take a pay cut to go home, like me. I mean, I took a pay cut so that I could be home. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give a practical experience so that I can just relate to that. So
Yes.
2 years ago, I decided that I'm not going to work at night anymore. I was done. I made a conscious decision that I'm going to take a pay cut, a really, really painful pay cut. But I knew that if I was to carry on and push myself, working overtime, especially at night, I was already heading for burnout. I was already burnt out. But I knew
Yes.
that if I didn't do anything about it, I was literally going to slip into depression. And I had just been newly married. I was a new mom. And I said to actually, I was just about to give birth. And, I mean, obviously, I prayed a lot about it. I'm quite spiritual. But I decided that, what, yes, the money is great. The money will be amazing. But I mean, I was in a situation where I didn't know how the washing machine worked in my house. My husband had to show me. I didn't know. I'd come back and be like, "What's this?" And it's like, "This is how it works."
Technology, babe, help me with this washing machine.
I was hardly home. If you're working on a 24-hour shift, the next day you don't even want to interact with anybody. You are extremely tired. You are not treated well at work. You're exploited. You're still underpaid, actually. So all of that was really sucking out every single bit of joy that I had. And also, I didn't want a situation where I regretted why I took the career that I did, because I was definitely heading there. I was going to end up resenting all my choices. I was going to be very angry. I think I started being very irritated with people saying, "Oh, you're a doctor so-and-so." I was like, "Can you just refer to me as Lerato?" And I hated that I was becoming that person. But mainly because I was overworked. And when I looked at the money and I looked at my mental health being, it was just not worth it. So we sat down with my husband, we had a plan and said, okay, how can we try and sort of make up for this pay cut that I'm going to take? But I was such a better individual after that. I was such a better mom after that. I was able to use my washing machine, I was a better person. And I was happier. And I think a lot of my friends and family have said, you look happier. You more, yes, I might not be, sometimes and there's also guilt because you've left, people are working really hard, saving lives at night, and here you are watching Netflix, so you have to work through the guilt as well. So going back to the question of how do you make time, it is a conscious decision based according to your character. Like for me, I made a decision that yes, I love my work, I love my job, but I want to be present for my husband and I want to be present for my child. So what's important? Like I said earlier on, that I had set aside a lot of the things that I love doing, and I didn't, like, I love talking, I love business. I couldn't do any of that because it was work. So for you as an individual, you need to sit down and say, but what makes me happy? Happiness, true happiness, not a matter of you happy on Monday, but tomorrow, no. As in, even when things are really bad, you are still happy, and to say, I'm happy. So you need to put that down according to priority, what matters first. I know for a lot of ladies, they always speak of, I'm sorry, you might have heard of a noise. It's my 2-year-old in the background. So some people always speak of the ladies speak of a BMW analogy. Are you a boss? Are you a mom? Are you a wife? Where is your priority? You get to decide that for yourself. Your career can come first. Your mothering, being a mother can come first, or being a father can come first. Being a wife can come first. Being a businesswoman can come first. I don't think that we need to judge and say, but you're a mother first or you're a businesswoman first. And I think that's a huge challenge that we have in the workplace, where a lot of us we're under so much pressure to excel in our careers that choosing to be a mom and choosing to be a wife is seen as a failure or even as a weakness. So some of those feelings, unfortunately, not everybody's going to come and make you feel better about themselves. You need to decide that this is important for me, so I'm going to make time for it. And if it means that I take a pay cut, I take a pay cut, but I'll find a way to do it. So I just wanted to give a practical example, a personal example of how I was able to prioritize what I wanted to do. And, eventually, because you are happy, you don't even feel that I took a pay cut. You are just so content with where you are and the things that matter to you. And it's going to respond back. Trust me, when you're happy, it will respond back. Your family will respond and thank you that, we love the fact that you are here most of the time and you're able to cook for us, etc., etc. So it's your responsibility to prioritize it, put it down, write it down and say, but what makes me happy in that order? And you are allowed to change that order anytime if you want to as well.
No, I'm sure, like Lerato, I'm sure it was a very empowering feeling being your first daughter, watching in, adding the softener, adding everything, being like, yes, I have this. This washing machine will not defeat me. So no, I'm making perhaps a smaller example, but I think the significance is actually, the quality time spent with your family and, finding the things that actually spark joy for you. So the topic and we're here to discuss, young professionals and how they can find that work-life balance, because I think, when you as a young professional, I mean, myself included, I came into the industry, I had all these exciting ideas. I had this, Simone, you need to prove yourself, you need to work additional hours. I was on the mine, till late, leaving late, starting early. And, it definitely takes a toll on your personal life. I mean, I can definitely say that, my relationship suffered. And, there were times when I would question, what is important and how do I spark joy in my own life? So I do think it's a very natural progression that we go through. And if you could give, say, two things or two questions that a young professional could ask themselves to try and lead them in the right direction for sparking joy, what would those questions that they should ask themselves?
All right, so I think, I've probably just mentioned it somewhere today, but the main thing that you just need to ask yourself as well goes back to, which sort of space or environment allows you to be the best version of yourself. Which
Wow.
space allows you to say, you know what, I'm not only content with where I am, I'm proud of myself, I feel like I belong here, and I feel like I'm making a difference, And for someone, that is being able to, attend their children's activities at school. You feel worthy, you feel like, you're really living out your purpose because you are there for your child, you're there to support their child. For someone, it's being able to drop off lunch at your husband's work. And for someone else, it's been able to, to be the best CEO there ever was in the company. And yes, we can have all of it. At some point, sometimes the other one is compromised. But I think the question that you need to ask yourself is, firstly, what is important to me? What will make me, look, if they were to say, you know what, you've got 6 months to live, what will make me at the end of 6 months say to myself, I've enjoyed this experience. I've put myself first, but most importantly, I've shown up as the best that I could be. And is the best, if being at work 24/7 means that, everything else is compromised, then you need to weigh up the options for yourself. Is that the best that you can be? And this does not mean that you can't have it all. You can have it all. You can have a balance between it all. It's just not easy. And in most cases, especially in the professional environment, like you said, there's so much pressure for us to prove ourselves. I mean, I still have questions when people are asking me, so what's your plan? What are you going to do? Are you coming back again? And you just like, you also need to realize that yes,
Yeah. It's like,
these choices are for you, and you don't have anyone else to answer to but yourself. Because as much as, yes, we do need to grow. I'm not saying we should be stagnant and not grow and, not explore other factors and other, factors of life or other specialties or anything, other fields. But also you need to understand that eventually you also have that much capacity, and once you start burning yourself out, you're going to end up losing everything. So not only the job, but the family, the friends, the business, because you are just not working optimally and at your peak. So sometimes people struggle to say that this, I'm not saying that there's a limit to it, but be able to say, you know what, yes, I am a director, I'm a CEO, but do I really need to become a group CEO? Because I've seen how hectic it is, or I'm just a GP, but I know that, if I specialize, it's going to take so much out of me. So also it's going back to research, go back to the people that have walked that road. Speak to the CEO, speak to the mining, consultant who's done so well, speak to the person who owns the mine, speak to the banker, speak to the people. I think that we are afraid to approach the version of ourselves that you want to see as. If I want to be a specialist, am I speaking to specialists? Also, speak to specialists who also maybe want the things. Am I speaking to specialists who are married and have kids? How do they do it? What do they do? What are their challenges? But also, it's important to be brutally honest in those conversations, because there's also no point in painting this unrealistic picture of having everything, knowing very well that there are challenges. when you also speak to other people, make sure that you relay your challenges. How has it affected your marriage? How has it affected your kids? How has it affected your job? Be honest, because I think at the end of the day, guys, the only references we have is each other. There's nothing else. It's either people have gone before you and have done it. That's your reference. The other end
And if
is
we're
to
all
do it with
telling each
others.
other,
Yeah.
100%, if we're all telling each other, it's great, whereas I'm not struggling. Like, everything is fantastic. My personal life, my professional life, everything. I exercise every day. The kids are in bed at the right time, teeth brushed. I don't have kids yet, but I'm imagining for the future. But and if all we do is consistently tell each other that everything's perfect, then that creates a very negative environment. And I think it leads into a question I wanted to ask. So how important are the people you hold dear and close to your psychological safety? So how important is your circle? Because I think we see on social media, we see, hashtag this, hashtag that, squad goals, we're friends, with this. And, you just wonder, beyond the social media facade, are you letting these people into your personal space, and is there toxicity? So I think just your comments on the importance of your circle.
All right. Yeah, that's a really great question. Thanks for that. So going, in your circle are not robots. Your circle are human beings. Let's just start there. So as much as you can have the best circle ever, your circle are also human beings. Your circle make mistakes just like you do, and your circle is not perfect. Because I think sometimes you can block out social media and block out everything else externally and stick to your circle. And sometimes you feel like your circle is disappointing you, and they are not. They are just as human. They are just as flawed. So I think we also need to go back and say, what, I'm not perfect, so why am I expecting my circle to be perfect? But the beauty lies in you guys embracing each other's imperfections. And that goes back to honest relationships. You need relationships where you can be like, what, actually, my husband today, we had a huge fight and I just need a timeout, for an hour. I need to coffee. You don't even have to just go into details, but you need to create safe spaces. And it goes back to people are human, some people are the people, they always say the people that you love the most are the ones that are going to disappoint you the most. And that's because of the love. It's unfortunate, but it's how it is, because of, the interaction of love that exists. But it's important for you, like to say, to identify characters that you can be very safe around, and characters that you can be very vulnerable around. And those are not easy to find. They are usually cultivated over a long period of time. And it doesn't have to, I always say to my friend, it doesn't have to be a whole squad of 10. One or two really are fine. Because sometimes,
and as you grow older, life just
yes, because a lot of relations become superficial. So you just need, that few that you can be vulnerable with, and also give them space to be human. They might not, if I pick up the phone and call my friend, she might not be able to answer now because she's tending to her baby or whatever. Give them space. They'll know what the call means to you. They'll get back to you, And then with the idea of social media, guys, social media is a picture. It is literally a picture. Someone once posted the fact that I could literally post a picture of myself right now, looking good, dressed up, and I literally just finished covered up, marks of being beaten up. You would never know. You would never, ever know. Why? Because social media is a picture, and not only is a picture, it's a picture that I choose to show you. So I'm not going to show you the marks. I'm not going to show you the hurt. I'm not going to show you the fights. I'm not going to show you my bad hair days. I'm not going to show you the day that I had a fight with my spouse. Zero. It's going to be hashtag love, what's it? Love lives here. Hashtag squad goals. I'm not going to show you all of that, because obviously it's a picture and I want people to only see that picture of me, but I don't want to break down my walls, because we all have walls. But that's why it's important to say that social media, they'll see the happy pictures, but I've got 2 or 3 of, whether it's females or it's males, where when I really have a crisis, I can sit and be like, guys, I'm not coping. I'm not saying that I'm falling apart or harm myself, but I just want to let someone know in my circle that I'm not okay. Sometimes you don't even need advice. You just need someone to know that she's not okay, but she'll be fine. But I know where her headspace is at. So it depends on the character of your circle, but also always allow everybody else to be human. They're just as human. Your circle is also not going to be perfect, but please make sure you do have 1 or at least 2 individuals in your life that can be your speed dial people, your crisis people. And enjoy social media, yes, post, but don't forget that social media is a picture, and that's all that it is.
I think only recently I've applied what you've said, Lerato, of protecting your energy and selecting who you share your deepest thoughts with, because intention is very important. And I think in finding that circle, you find people with genuine intent, and I think that's the real stuff. That's the friendship that you can call at any time of the day, and that either they'll get back to you or whenever, but when you do get a chance to talk, that is for your soul. It's not something that's just a plaster on a deep cut wound. It'll actually heal what is needed to be healed. So thank you for that. I think we are at 6 o'clock, but there is one last question if you're able to answer with us. You mentioned the importance of a life coach or mentorship, and I think as a young professional myself, and knowing young professionals, I think I'd be doing our listeners a disservice not to ask you, the importance of mentorship, and how do you identify a mentor? I think is such a critical question, because we understand I want mentorship, and do I just take someone who is senior to me in the company and say, hi, mentor me? How do you identify it?
Yeah, shame. That's so nice for us to unpack with the few minutes that we have left. It's firstly, I mean, whoever feels that it's never easy to identify a mentor, your feelings are so valid. It's not the easiest of tasks ever, because not forgetting people's characters. Sometimes people feel that they don't want to mentor; they just want to show their success, and that's where it ends. So it's also very character based. But the best thing that you could do as well is to, once you've identified obviously what you're interested in and what you want to cultivate and hone in on, there are people obviously that are in that field or in that sector that you want to be involved in. It is nice to always have someone who's been through the process, but like I said, not everybody is going to be receptive. So try different people, try different characters. You'll be surprised at what you find, firstly. Secondly, if you feel that you can't identify someone at your current job or work or home or anything, get a life coach or a therapist to then sit down and say, okay, fine, maybe perhaps there's certain issues that you have and that's making it hard for you to connect with this person. Let's unpack that. And you can identify that. And then also, platforms like these as well, and engaging with mentorship programs is so important. So the more that we create these programs and make it a safe space for people to get mentorship, because sometimes people feel that they're being a burden, to their mentor or anything like that. So it shouldn't be like that. And also to understand that your mentor is just as human as well. They're not going to come with this whole perfect picture. They're also, going to come with their human experiences. So I would say identify your mentor, identify what skills you want to improve, what knowledge you want to gain, and then who is best in that environment that you've identified. If you fail at that, don't stop. Look for the next person. It took my husband literally almost 4 or 5 years to find a suitable mentor. He has been trying and he just wasn't gelling with those people. But eventually he found someone that he didn't even think, in a million years would mentor him. And they have a great relationship now. And, one of the things he says to me, I just didn't give up and I didn't blame myself. I just told myself, some people are just not ready to be mentors. Allow them that space, move on to the next. But also don't forget to plug into mentorship. So social media is great for that. There's so many mentorship programs, life coaches on social media that you can get, not just social media, even on the internet as well. I don't mind sending an email of, a list of life coaches that I've worked with personally that are excellent, and other mentorship programs that I know, especially mentorship programs for professionals, and just cultivating that culture of nurturing people that want to achieve what you've achieved and sharing knowledge. So yeah, programs, life coaches, character, and just being patient with finding someone that sort of gels with your character.
100%. Lerato, we really appreciate that list. And, I think when we send out the presentation or whatever communication we send, we'd love to include that for our members. I think they could really gain value from that, because it would take away the fear of how do I ask? Because I think often that's the fear. And just a last comment. Sorry, I'm like squeezing everything I can out of you for our listeners. A very, very last comment is often I think we tend to resonate with people who are similar to us. So what I found is that it's very easy to cultivate a relationship with someone who's also chatty, who's also outgoing, who's also those things in my life personally. And when I've looked at my career journey and my mentorship journey, I found that I've gained the most value from the people who are most different from me. And it tends to be potentially, someone who's more reserved, someone who's more structured, my life partner is very different to me in the sense that, you know, he's very structured and organized and provides a lot of logic and, you know, a lot of compliment. And I think just your comments on not trying to potentially find someone who's identical to you and seeking different, is that a thing? Is it something we should try to do? What are your experiences with that?
So with that, you know, we just sort of go back to what is it that you need out of the relationship. You can literally have 6 or 7 people that you talk to and coach you just because they have different things to share with you. You know, it does not necessarily need to be, I have this perfect person who's got every single thing that I want to learn from them. You can have someone who really advises you or speaks to you very well on, you know, matters at home. Someone who speaks to you very well, you know, on how to raise kids. Someone who speaks to you about spirituality or your religion. And then someone who helps you about career. But even in the career, you can break it down. Yes, maybe you might not want to have a whole lot of mentors, but it doesn't mean that, you know, there's a perfect structure into it. You can have someone who's completely like my supervisor. She's completely different from me. Very quiet, yeah. You know, she's very structured. But I know when there's certain qualities about her that I want to learn from her. So I hone in on that. And then the one who's very chatty, very forthgoing, there's certain qualities about that. So sometimes maybe don't give up just because this person does not check, like, you know, check all your tick boxes, but at least it's someone that will help you to achieve what you wanted to learn from them. And then what they cannot accommodate or what they don't know about or have enough knowledge about, then you look at other platforms. So I think let's not go into mentorship having or expecting people to be these perfect individuals with everything, you know, sorted out. For all we know, they're still trying to figure out things themselves. So whatever quality that they possess, that you have, that you think they have, and you can grow from that, take that from that person, and then from someone else, you can learn something else. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. I think because everyone has their unique thing that they're good at. And I think having more than one person offer the best versions of themselves, we can take those and accumulate them and learn so much more. So no, I really appreciate your comments and your answer. Lerato, it was amazing chatting with you. I can tell from, you know, our YPC members that it was enjoyable and much needed. I think it was real talk and it wasn't just some poster mental health, the beautiful picture. It was real, and that you struggle as well, and that we struggle. So I think just from our side, we want to say a sincere and heartfelt thank you for I think more than presenting, I think just for sharing yourself with us. And I think that's maybe my last bit from me, just to say thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you for having me, and thank you to everybody who made time to attend this webinar. Thank you so much, Simone.
Okay, no, lovely. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.